Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. The biggest news of the day is obviously the meeting between President Zelensky, European leaders, and Donald Trump at the White House. And I was honestly considering that it's going to be an easy news to cover, that I will just briefly explain what happened, which I thought was not much. Unfortunately, the situation went completely sideways. So it has some major implications. That is why after I record this news broadcast, I will finish the script and release the full coverage of what happened there tomorrow. So today we're going to be covering the other latest news in Ukraine, but be on the lookout for that video tomorrow. Believe me, it's not the one to miss. Firstly, correction and update from yesterday. I called this here vehicle M113, but it is not. It's actual Russian Gaz-71. But more importantly, a little bit of an update. It has been blown up to pieces. It's gone. So the American flag didn't help Russians. I mean, whoop, whoop, whoop. I guess that's all I can say. But coming back to something more serious is that just mere hours after the meeting between Trump and President Zelensky has concluded, Russia being Russia launched an attack on the Kremenchuk city in Poltava region with their drones and missiles. Because of course they couldn't just take one day to not strike civilians in Ukraine. Russia is a terrorist state and they're just confirming it every single day. Some additional information on the Ukrainian new Flamingo missile that we talked about yesterday is that not only it is able to fly 3,000 kilometers, but it's also able to carry 1.1 ton warhead with it. And that is a lot of explosives. It's not enough to maybe blow up something as big as a bridge, but it is definitely something that is sufficient to blow up certain production facilities. Let's say certain production facilities in Russia that produce Shahid drones. And thank you so much here to Kraut, the friend of the channel, for actually marking on the map with the red dot. Yes, this is where the Russian, oops, I guess I cannot use that. This is where the Russian facility for the production of Shahid drones is located, so it is well within range of this missile to strike it. It has been confirmed that the missile has been tested in battle conditions, so now the production is aimed to be scaled at. Even a couple of these missiles will be a huge benefit to Ukrainians. And after thinking a little bit about the timing of this missile and the fact that it has been compared with certain European missiles, this kind of came back to my memory. If you remember, in May of this year, German Chancellor stated very loudly that he is going to be sending experts and they're going to be working closely with Ukraine to develop the long-range strike-capable missiles. And this was done because there was a lot of controversy on Taurus missile. So if this is indeed the sort of a substitute that is being made here for Taurus, then I think this is a very fair deal. And if it is indeed the case, I would like to say thank you to the German Chancellor and thank you to the people of Germany. Additionally, because there is a lot more economic cooperation right now between Ukraine and the Europeans, Ukrainians are launching the grant programs for their manufacturers of missiles and explosives within Ukraine. This grant program has already been existing for certain manufacturers of drones and other weapons, and now we're going to see what the other enterprises come out with financing that has come from the state for the missiles and explosives. I guess now that the drones are a pretty good place, Ukrainians are like, well, let's now make a lot more missiles. And that is a pretty good news. Beyond that, Ukraine has been also outlined as now a partner of the European defense contracts. For this year, it's just going to be 1 billion euro, but this is now an official cooperation between Ukraine and the European defense contractors. So the European money that goes to the defense contractors can also go to the Ukrainian defense production companies. the closer integration is between Ukraine and Europeans, the safer we all were going to be, and the more output of Ukrainian weapons we will see on the front lines. And missiles like Flamingo will appear more often. But the main topic today is the Druzhba oil pipeline. It has been long discussed about why this pipeline is still operating, why Ukrainians are allowing it to operate, because it's just supplying Russian oil to the markets. It's a fully legitimate military target. And this pipeline is a crucial connection between Europe here. As you can see, it goes all the way in all of the places in Europe. And the answer was very simple, because Ukraine needed an alignment with their partners in Europe that the disruptions in the Druzhba pipeline would not cause massive suffering for the Europeans. Now, with the Europeans accepting of the 18 sanctions package and outlining that they will be completely shifting away from the supplies from Russia, this is now a completely legitimate target that will not cause major disruptions in Europe. Well, except for some. The complete outage of pipeline has caused, let's just say, representatives, I'm not going to use any stronger words here, from Hungary and Slovakia, the main consumers of Russian oil, the ones that are going behind every European back and every Ukrainian back and just essentially getting that cheap Russian oil that is paid for additionally with European blood. These guys, instead of supporting the sanctions against Russia and getting off that Russian pipeline, what everyone in Europe has been telling them from, they instead made new contracts with Russia to get that oil from the Druzhba pipeline. Now, Druzhba pipeline, as you can see by this sketch, the Unecha point that I've circled with red, this is where Ukrainians hit it, so the whole pipeline network is completely out of commission. And you can say that the new Minister of Energy of Hungary, by the name of Robert Magyar, is starting his work. Developments in the southern direction of Ukraine. A big Russian train has been blown up near Tokmak. It is important because Russians have built a railway that goes from the mainland Russia, not through the Crimean Bridge, but through the southern occupied land bridge territories. And Ukrainians were looking for a way to take this out. Beforehand, there was some partisan activity in the area where they were striking targets and they were striking trains, but Ukrainians were working on a systematic change. And this train and images that we saw with this train is that the whole train was on fire. More importantly, there are statements from Ukrainians stating that this is the start of their systematic campaign for the removal of capacity of that train line. They want to shut down that train line for the Russians. Some time ago, there was an explosion at the Russian gunpowder factory, and it was unclear because there was no drone activity reported. So at first it thought that it was Ukrainian sabotage, but again, there was no real understanding whether it was or was not. Now it is being reported that the explosion at the Russian gunpowder factory happened due to the careless handling of explosives. And that explosion, you can go to our Discord. I'm pretty sure we will reshare the videos from that area. So you can see the videos. It's like nothing there. It's a huge explosion, just basically tore the buildings down to the ground. It took out 4 buildings completely. 600 units of the 152 millimeter artillery shells were also taken out. And also 300 tons of gunpowder are now not gonna be fired at Ukrainians anymore. The results and benefits from the Ukrainian Spiderweb operations are still coming, and it has now been acknowledged and calculated that after the execution of the Spiderweb operation, the activity of the Russian strategic missile strikes on Ukraine has been cut in half. That is an incredible achievement. So here, Ukraine is fighting actively the Russian ability to continue this war. Some of the worst Russian propaganda that you probably never seen is the one that is aimed at kids, because you're not the target audience. and it is absolutely disgusting. It aims to militarize kids. It aims to breed hatred inside of them towards the surrounding nations. And it aims to grow that superiority understanding of like that we Russians are the best nation there is in the world, which is like completely Third Reich BS nonsense. And now the same specialized propaganda is being dedicated to go into the kindergartens, targeting ages from 3 to 7. So already from the kindergartens, Russia will be indoctrinating Ukrainian kids. A very interesting observation came in from the Russian captured troops. Some of the troops that were captured in the Pokrovsk area have stated that because of the Ukrainian control of activity and inability to use any kind of vehicles in Pokrovsk area, to get to the front lines to start executing orders, these guys and all of the other troops that didn't make it, they had to walk 25 kilometers from Selidove all the way to Pokrovsk because there was just no ability to use transport. We talked extensively beforehand about the new Ukrainian tactic they want to implement, the so-called drone line. So, and one of the areas of focus of that drone line was specifically at taking out vehicles at certain distance. So if Russians could not use vehicles over 25 kilometers, I think some parts of the front line are already experiencing the drone line concept consequences. Great news that it is being implemented. Ukrainian High Command have announced the creation of the assault troops in the Ukrainian army. These troops will be best described as the firefighting force. They will be directly supervised under Syrski's control. Syrski is acknowledged to be a pretty good operational level general, that he can really plan a lot of these fast-moving breakthrough operations, such as the Kharkiv counteroffensive, the Kursk offensive of Ukraine. And what basically is happening here is that some of these assault units, like 33rd Assault Regiment, 1st Assault Regiment, 225th, and 425th and 210th Assault Regiments, are now being incorporated in this one force that is dedicated at executing specifically the operations that Syrski is aiming to do. They can either go and fight Russians in counter move whenever the Russian offensive is starting, or they will most likely be executed for any kind of a Ukrainian offensive operation. I mean, that means only one thing, that Syrski is going to be planning something. Another reminder that the whole of Europe is at war with Russia and that Russians are conducting their hostile actions against us, this time against Poland. Over the past few months, the Cyber Defense 24 reported the attacks on, and I'm going to be very sorry for butchering the Polish names, the water treatment plant in Sytno, water treatment plants in Malditi, Tokmichko, Sierakov, wastewater treatment plants in Witkov, wastewater treatment plants in Kuznica, pools and fountains, a small hydroelectric power plant in Pomeranian Voivodeship in May 2025. So Russians are attacking our infrastructure and making us pay for all of this, because all of these attacks need to be dealt with, and this requires resources, and we as taxpayers are paying for these resources. In this example here, it's the Polish people that are paying for it, but this is true for every single European, because Russia is attacking everyone and we are paying for this. That is why we need to make sure that we respond in kind. Finally, I want to cover this article by the important stories, the Russian opposition, if that even exists, media, that is talking about the Russian recruitment drive. And I want to say very, very careful about what is written here, because there are other sources that are contradicting their methodology and they're contradicting their results. However, we still need to hear about this, because what they are stating is that the Russian recruitment drive have seen significant drop. The explanation being that at the start of the year, when Trump came back to power, this is when the Russians felt that soon the war might be over, and therefore they were flocking to try to get some of that easy money from the Russian army. So they were hoping to sign a contract with the Russian military, spend some time in the training. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, this is just how they were thinking. And basically, by the time that Trump is in office already, and then is going to be quick negotiations, and because Ukraine is a puppet of United States, then they will just finish the war, and that's it. And they will just get easy money, and they will be done and over with, and that's it. And that's why there was an increased drive during the end of 2024 and the first quarter of the 2025. However, as during the end, towards the end of the first quarter, when it became absolutely clear that there is not going to be a quick ceasefire, and then there's the second quarter of 2025 data that's coming out right now, there was a very massive drop of how much people actually signed the contract. And important stories are reporting that during the second quarter, only 37,900 contracts were signed to get to the Russian military. That is a lot lower than is reported by any other sources. That is why I still want to report on these news, because it is really interesting and there is a logic why this is now falling down. But more importantly, if this is actually true, then Russians are not having such a good time even with the people joining their military. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let us talk tomorrow about what happened at the White House. Even if you normally don't listen to anything like this, I really recommend you to do, because there was a lot of really good things to hear about. Trust in Ukrainian armed forces. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you tomorrow.